Alright guys, so here's section 3.2. Now what we're going to do is we're going to look at the same thing we looked at with 3.1, except we're going to use the property of parallel lines and try to figure out what type of angle pair relationships we have. We know what type of angles there are. You've got your corresponding, your alternating interior, your alternating exteriors, and your same side or consecutive interior angles. Now we're going to figure out what happens when they're parallel. Okay. So quick recap. Name as many pairs that you can here. Let me make these numbers bigger. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Start off with our corresponding. Corresponding, same side location. So upper left on line 1 is 1. Upper left on line 2 is 5. So 1 and 5. 2 and 6. 3 and 7. 4 and 8. Okay. Over here we'll do our alternating interiors. Remember, so inside the lines and crossing the transversal, so 3 and 6. Okay. And 4 and 5. And on the same lines, the alternating exteriors, so they're on the outside, so 1 and 8. And 2 and 7. Our alternating exteriors, and finally our same side interiors or our consecutive interiors, 3 and 5 and 4 and 6. There's all of those angle pair relationships. Okay, all those angle pair relationships. Now my question is quite simply, what would happen to those same angle pair relationships if I told you that these lines were parallel? So line 1 and line 2 are parallel now. Okay, what changes about it? You're going to find some theorems and postulates. You've got postulate 15, theorem 3.1, 3.2, 3.3. You guys will have to look those up in your book. But let me talk a little bit about these. Okay, what postulate 15 states is our corresponding angles are now all the same, meaning that angle 1 is congruent to angle 5. Angle 2 is congruent to angle 6. Angle 3 is congruent to angle 7, and angle 4 is congruent to angle 8. That's what postulate 15 says, meaning that if this is 110 degrees, then angle 5 is 110, which means that angle 2 would be what? Well, if this is 110, we can use the idea of a linear pair to come up with 70 degrees, which means 6 is 70 degrees. Vertical angles tells me that 4 is 110, which means 8 is 110. And likewise with 3 and 7, they would be 70 degrees. Okay. Guys, you can solve one of these diagrams easily with corresponding angles. You're going to need corresponding angles, vertical angles, and linear pairs. Don't forget any of those things. Okay. If we look back here, the next thing it tells me is my alternating interior angles are congruent. It tells me my alternating exterior angles are congruent. And then it tells me my consecutive interior angles or my same side interior angles are supplementary. Okay, so let's try one of these. Okay. Now, I'm actually going to bring up a totally new diagram here, guys. So bear with me while I draw lines that I'm going to try to make parallel here. So here's what we've got. Let's say that this is 95 degrees. That's X, this is Y, that's Z, and I want you to find all those missing informations. I'm going to tell you that line 1 is parallel to line 2, and you've got a transversal. I want to see if you can fill out all of these. Okay, go ahead and pause the video real quick. Okay, hopefully you were able to figure out some of these. Let's just start with the easy ones. Okay, let's start with this line. This plus this equals 180. So that tells me that right here has to be 85 degrees. And the reason for that is it's a linear pair. I can now fill in my vertical angles, meaning that that's 95 degrees. And that's 85 degrees. Let's quickly check. This plus this equals 180. 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 Now, because of the fact of it being parallel, we can use all of those relationships. So our alternating interior angles are congruent, meaning Z is now equal to 85 degrees. It also means Y is equal to 95 degrees. So I'm going to put 95 here and 85 here. Do these still add up to 180? Yes, they do, so we're still good. I can also use my corresponding, so lower right and lower right. Therefore, x equals 95 degrees. And I can check that because of the vertical angles. Are my vertical angles still congruent? Yes, they are. Okay. All of those things are congruent. Now, let's just double check something. Our only one that's not congruent is our same side, or our consecutive interiors, and that would be these two angles here, this and this. And what the theorem states is that our same side, or our consecutive interior angles, have to equal 180, or supplementary. Do these two add to 180? Well, 85 plus 95 equals 180 degrees. Yes, it does. Okay. So you can see all of those are correct. Okay, all those are correct. Now, with this, I want you guys to try the homework from section 3.2. Okay, careful. Make sure you remember corresponding, alternating interiors and alternating exteriors are always the same. They're always congruent. Whereas same side or consecutive interiors are supplementary. Okay, guys, I'll have 3.3 up in just a minute too, okay? If you have questions, let me know. Email me. Okay, let me know. All right.